August 5th, 2012, I woke up excited. It was the day that we were going to be dedicating our baby, our new baby, at the Gurdwara, which is the Sikh temple. Many of our relatives have traveled from all over the world, actually, to meet our baby. So I was so excited. I woke up early. I had purchased something on Amazon for the baby, a 3-piece, really obnoxious but also adorable little white suit. And we got my kids dressed and we showered them and we made our way to the Gurdwara. And when we got there, I realized that most of my family was actually already there preparing the meals for the day. And I knew that as soon as they saw my children, I was with my 2-month-old baby, Zion, and I was with my 3-year-old, then Zephaniah. And I knew that as soon as my family saw the children, that was going to be the end of it for me. And so I thought, let me sneak a couple of quiet minutes with them before they get taken away. So I took off our shoes and I washed our hands and I covered our heads. And then we went into the worship hall. No one was in there except for the 3 priests who were in the front playing the tablas and chanting. We walked up to the altar. I laid Zion down, and then Zephaniah and I got down on our hands and our knees, and we touched our heads to the ground. And while I was down there, I prayed. I said, "Dear God, thank you. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be the mother of these children. And God, please, help me. Help me be the best mom I can be." In a parallel reality, across town at the other Gurdwara, something very different was happening. While I was holding my 2 children in my arms, a man was walking into the temple there, holding a gun and 3 rounds of ammunition. While the sounds of drums were filling the space, bullets were taking the lives of people. And where there should have been beautiful chanting, like the chanting that I was listening to, there were screams. Within minutes, maybe even seconds, those 2 realities collided, and confusion and chaos replaced the peace that I'd had in the sanctuary. Now, I'm not exactly sure what happened because I can only remember really like bits and pieces of it. But I remember people frantically calling on their phones, trying to figure out where the rest of their family was. I remember my father walking by very briskly. He was on the phone, and I would later learn that he was talking to somebody who was hiding in a closet in Oak Creek. At that moment, we really didn't know what was going on, but the prevailing notion was that there was a gunman, maybe gunmen, and they were executing people at the Gurdwara. We were on lockdown inside of our temple, and we had to stay there until the police could confirm that a similar attack wasn't going to be happening in our temple in Brookfield. And I remember looking outside the window, and there was a police officer dressed in full-on SWAT gear, and my brain, like it couldn't handle that. And I felt myself sitting on the brink of total chaos and confusion. And then I looked down, and I realized I still had my children there. I was holding my baby, and my 3-year-old was looking up in my face, and he was trying to understand what was going on. They were looking at me, and they were trying to understand, like, how should I be responding? What should I be doing at this moment? And they snapped me back into reality. And I remembered, this is why I came here in the first place, right? So I grabbed my children, and I took them back into the temple, and I recentered myself. And I pulled them closer, and I started praying again. God, thank you for this life, and thank you for these children. And please stop whatever is happening on the other side of town. Please have mercy on all of the people who are involved. And God, if this gunman should enter this sanctuary, use my body one last time to protect my children. Please, God, spare their lives. Now, that's not something I ever thought that I would have to pray. It's not something that I ever thought that I'd have to pray in my sanctuary, and it's certainly not something you ever want to have to pray over your children. And yet, even as that prayer was crossing my lips, I had peace. You see, in my moment of fear, I chose faith. And that's the thing that had brought me to the church in the temple in the first place. You see, one of the first principles in Sikhism is to remember God at all times. Now, for those of you who may be unfamiliar with what happened that evening, or that morning, a gunman entered into the temple in Oak Creek. He identified himself as a white supremacist, and when he entered the building, he opened fire and killed 6 people before taking his own life. The second tenet of Sikhism teaches us to pursue honest work and to accept both pains and pleasures as blessings. Now, while the devastation and the sorrow of that day and of what happened and what we saw here today, it will always be jarring. But I have to tell you that the massacre actually illuminated that second tenet for me too. Because even in the midst of all of that darkness, I also witnessed great beauty. You see, after the mass shooting, people didn't run away from us. People responded by running towards us. They tried to educate themselves. Our temple was filled with people who wanted to know how they could help. They reached out to us as fellow human beings, and they embraced our culture, and they embraced our faith. They let their souls connect with our humanity, and they sat with us. They hugged us. They cried with us. And we were filled up again. You see, in our moment of pain, they helped us choose joy. Now, the last tenet of Sikhism, it puts a huge emphasis on community. It calls for us to contribute whatever we have, whatever has been given us to the greater good. And it's this tenet that I actually wish the most I could have shared with the shooter. See, I wish I could have told him before he murdered 6 people that he too would have been invited into our temple. Because of this belief, this idea of a greater community, anybody can go to any gurdwara, anywhere in the world at any time, and receive food and shelter. You see, even our holiest temple, the Golden Temple, it feeds 100,000 people a day, and it never closes. The Sikh community's commitment to service was not lost in the midst of our tragedy. I watched with great, incredible pride as the Sikh community showed up to do whatever they could with whatever they had. Though the number of people who came to the Gurdwara multiplied beyond anything anyone could have expected, we never ran out of food and we never ran out of water. The young people put together information packets so that you could understand, the guests could understand what they were hearing and what they were seeing. My cousins called out for peace, even as they were mourning the loss of their father. You see, in our moment of personal harm, we chose to serve others. Now, I am not an expert in mass shootings. I'm not an expert in trauma-informed care. I'm not an expert in gun violence. But one thing that I am certain of, what the Sikh massacre confirmed for me, is that even in the midst of deep, dark sadness, in the midst of fear, in the midst of anger, we still have choices. When my children ask me about what happened on August 5th, 2012, I will tell them that somebody made a terrible and very sad decision, one that I don't ever want to even fully comprehend. But I will also teach them that at the height of all that confusion, love prevailed. I will teach them that when one person hurts, we all should be hurting because we cannot heal without one another. I will teach them that these issues are not black, they're not brown, they're not white. The most meaningful change happens between us. I will teach them that these issues are complex, but that is not an excuse for us not to try to solve them. I will teach them that everyone deserves to be treated like a human. Even those people who inflict harm on others. As a mother, as a champion of children, and as a committed member of this community, I found comfort in the tenets of Sikhism. The presumed intent of the shooter was to take that comfort away, but his actions actually strengthened it. In these mass shooting situations, I have learned that the power is actually not in the action. The power is in the response. I hope that the world looks differently when my children are adults. I hope that the idea of a mass shooting is not only seems implausible, that it actually is. My children are 3 and 7 now, and they still look at me for guidance. That's an honor that I hope to have for the rest of my life. So I will try to live in faith and in joy and in service every day. And I guarantee that every single person in this room has a child that is also looking at you for guidance. There are children who are studying the way that you are responding for their own understanding. So I ask you, what do you hope they see? What is the song that you are teaching them? Thank you.